Hello, welcome back to the channel. We got another video for you today. We're going to be doing the Chronomancer, doing the review, talking about the advanced tactics and all that kind of good stuff. But before we do, I just wanted to give a little thank you to all the members that are within the members area of the YouTube channel. I don't thank you guys enough, so I just wanted to personally thank you guys for all the donations that come into the channel. Everything gets put straight back into the channel, whether it's on the tech, whether it's on the studio, it all comes back in. So thank you very much. And if you haven't already and you want to get involved in the members area, click the blue button below, the join button, for more information. Okay, so we've got the Chronomancer today. It's obviously a HQ selection within the Codex. It's coming in at 5 power level or 80 points. Now there will be some upgrade options later on in the video. We'll talk about those in a bit, but let's get on with the data sheet. So it's got an 8-inch movement, it's got weapon skill 3+, ballistic skill 3+, strength and toughness is 4, wounds 4, attacks 1, leadership 10 and a 4+ armor save. So pretty basic in terms of a stat line, however that movement of 8 inches is pretty handy. It does allow him to keep up with certain destroyer units, for example. We'll go on to that in the synergy section later on. So moving down into the keywords, of course he's an infantry model, he's a character model, he's a cryptech model, he's got the fly keyword, and of course he's a Chronomancer. So all of those are going to have some sort of interactions with the Codex, which we'll get onto at some point in the video. But now let's talk about his war gear. Now there's options with the war gear section. So he does come stock with the Aeon Stave and the Chronotendrils. So let's go through those to begin with. So the Aeon Stave is used in both shooting and in melee. So the shooting side of the weapon is range 18 inches, assault D3, strength 5, -2 AP and 1 damage. Now it does have the blast ability and also no in-run saves can be made against this weapon. Now it is only 1 damage, so you can't expect too much from it, but you can be peeling off a couple of models, especially the ones that have got an in-run save, the annoying little ones, Gene Stealers for example, or Demon units. Anything that has an in-run save, it just completely removes that, and that -2 AP isn't too bad either. Now the melee side of things, it's only strength 4 because it's strength user. Again it's -2 AP and 1 damage, and again no in-run saves can be made against the weapon. Now you only get 1 attack with the Chronomancer with this weapon, so it's not very useful. You don't want to be rushing your Chronomancer into a fight. He's not going to be the best fighter on the battlefield. Then we come to his Chronotendrils, which I kind of forget he has half the time. It's basically a strength user weapon, so it's strength 4, no AP, 1 damage, and you get 3 additional attacks with this weapon. Does this make him a better fighter in combat? No, not really. Just don't put him into combat unless you have to. Which then brings me on to his upgrade option, which is the Entropic Lance. Now it costs you 10 points to take this lance, and it will replace the Aeon Stave. So it's also a ranged weapon as well as a melee weapon again. So let's check this one out. So this one is again 18-inch range when you're shooting with it. It's assault 1 rather than D3, but it is strength 8, -3 AP, and the damage is D3 +3. It's very rare in our codex that we've got this kind of damage roll. Normally we're a D6, it's normally pretty poor with that kind of stuff. But D3 +3 is an average of 5 damage. So that's the shooting side of it. In terms of the melee side of it, it's strength user, so it's again strength 4, but it's -3 AP and a flat 3 damage. So it can do some damage, it can take off a Terminator model for example. I'm still not going to be throwing a Chronomancer into a Terminator fight, but you've got it as a backup. Now I would always take this upgrade, the 10-point upgrade with the Entropic Lance. For me, it's just worth it. You're effectively having a strength 8 weapon with the D3 +3 damage, and he's a character so you can quite easily hide him within a Lookout Sir bubble, or some crypto throws, which again we'll talk about later in the synergy section, but you're effectively hiding that model, hiding that weapon for quite a long period of the game. Okay, so that's the war gear all dealt with. Let's get on to the abilities. Now he's got the 2 standard abilities of course, Living Metal because he's a multi-wound model. He regains a lost wound in the command phase. Yep, not too bad. He's also got the command protocols, which is actually okay because he's a character model, so they're always going to work on him no matter where he is on the board. He doesn't need to be within 6 inches of another character because he's within 6 inches of himself. So it's always going to work on him regardless of where you are on the battlefield. Now the more unique abilities, the first one is the Dynastic Advisors. So providing that you're Battleforged and you've got a noble on the table, you can effectively bring a second cryptic model within your HQs and it's not going to take up any slots. So if you've already filled up your slots in say a battalion detachment and you can't take any more than 3, you can take another cryptic if you've already got a cryptic as well as a noble model within your list. He's then got the Time Splinter Mantle, which is a 4+ invulnerable save. Now he's the only cryptic that has a natural 4+ invuln save, or any invuln save in fact. All the others don't have one, so that's going to be pretty handy with his survivability. Then the main ability here that he's got is the Chronometron ability. This is the reason you're taking a Chronomancer. So any core units that are within 9 inches get to reroll their charge rolls, and they also get a 5+ invulnerable save. So there is a slight restriction, they must be a Dynasty unit, so you can't be using this on Triumphs Praetorians for example. They must be a Dynasty unit within the same Dynasty as the Chronomancer, but giving them a reroll to the charge roll as well as a 5% invulnerable save is pretty huge in my opinion. So that's the datasheet all dealt with. Let's move on to the in-game uses. So there's two main uses that I'd take a Chronomancer for. One of them is more important than the other. I'll go through both of them anyway. The first one is of course the Chronometron ability. Giving us access to the reroll to the charge roll and the invuln save is pretty big. And if you're taking him with the Veil of Darkness relic, you could be getting some Scorpic Destroyers for example, right up the battlefield. It could be turn 1, it could be turn 3, whatever turn you want it to be. Those Scorpic Destroyers don't have an invuln save and they don't naturally reroll their charge roll. So giving them both those abilities in one hit is pretty mega. Especially when you combine it with certain dynasties, which we'll go over in a bit as well. Now the second in-game use for me is just he's a cheap character model that's got a 4+ invulnerable save. Now you can compare him to an Overlord that also has that phase shifter invulnerable save, but the Chronomancer is slightly cheaper if you didn't want to go down that avenue. You didn't want to go with the Nobles, you wanted to go with the Cryptex. It's a cheaper way of doing it if you wanted to save on points. So that's the two in-game uses. The main one really is that Chronometron ability. That's the reason you're taking this guy. Okay, stratagems. So there's 4 stratagems that are going to be available that I would use with a Chronomancer. So the first one is the Resurrection Protocols. It's 1 command point and you can use it on a Noble model or a Cryptek model. So it's got that Cryptek keyword so you can use it on your Chronomancer. So when he's destroyed in a certain phase, you wait till the end of the phase, and it's quite important that you wait till the end. And on a 4+ roll, you basically stand him back up with D3 wounds remaining. Now you can only use it on the same model once per battle, but 1 is enough. Now it is a 4+ roll, so it is a little bit of a chance, 50-50 of course. I don't think I've ever failed this roll if I'm honest with you. I've always got my guy back up. Now it's really important that it's used at the end of the phase and not straight after he's been destroyed, because of course that leaves your opponent with the opportunity to re-kill him again. Whereas if you're doing it at the end of the phase, especially if it's the fight phase, they've lost all their opportunity to kill him. He's going to be alive in your turn, in your command phase, to use Chronometron. I then wanted to mention the Techno Oracular Targeting stratagem for a command point. Effectively it's an auto wound roll on a single dice. Now why I'm mentioning this with the Chronomancer is because of that Entropic Lance he has with that Strength 8, with that D3+3 damage. You want to be getting that one off. You don't want to miss that one. Now it is only 18-inch range, but if you can hit with that, I'd pull this stratagem out, auto wound, average of 5 damage if it goes through. I like to use that one. Then the other 2 stratagems that are available, Dynastic Heirlooms and the Rarefied Nobility stratagem, just if you want to get an extra Warlord trait or if you want to get an extra relic within your list. You can put both of them on the Chronomancer because it's a character model. Now the Warlord traits in general aren't that great, especially for a Chronomancer, but you might want to take that Veil of Darkness relic as mentioned already, put it on him, off you go. So Dynasty Codes, what are the best Dynasty Codes for a Chronomancer? Now to be honest, all of them kind of work with the Chronomancer because of his ability. However, I did want to highlight the Novak Dynasty because of that +1 to the charge roll and the extra bit of AP on the charge. Now that's not going to work directly with the Chronomancer because you don't want him doing that charge. However, if he's gone with the unit of say Lich Guard with the War Scythes, or if he's gone with the unit of Scorpic Destroyers, getting that +1 to the charge roll and it's re-rollable and giving them the invuln save of course and the extra AP on top of that with the Novak code is pretty decent. Not forgetting their stratagem as well, which is Blood Rights, getting an extra attack with that unit making the charge. But to be honest with you, all the Dynasty Codes are going to work with the Chronomancer. I just wanted to highlight that one particular one because it works really well with the Chronometron ability. So synergy, this is probably the biggest chapter with this video. There's a lot of synergy here. Again, it's mainly due to that Chronometron ability. So we're going to talk about what units are going to benefit from using that Chronometron ability. So the first one I wanted to mention is Necron Warriors. Now if you're taking 20 Necron Warriors, giving those 20 warriors an invuln save, that's going to make them massively resilient because they've also got that their number is Legion ability, so they're rerolling ones to reanimate. Maybe there's an Overlord in there with a Resurrection Orb, there could be a Ghost Arc, Technomancer, there's all sorts of shenanigans that you can do, bringing back warrior models, and the Chronomancer can just add to that resiliency with a 5+ invuln save. Now they don't really need that charge move, rerolling the charge roll, they don't need that, but keeping them up and running definitely is a massive tactic. The second one is Flayed Ones. Now if you're taking a unit of 20 Flayed Ones, that's a buttload of attacks, especially if you're taking the Novak code, you're going to be re-rolling that charge, a +1 to the charge on top of that. Use all 3 of the stratagems, use the Novak stratagem, use the 2 Flayed One stratagems. They're going to be absolutely mincing through anything they get hold of. Now the best part about this is the Chronomancer can take that Dimensional Sanctum Cryptek Arcana. He can deep strike in with the Flayed Ones, meet them in a certain location. Okay, he won't be able to give them the reroll to their charge roll in that turn because he's missed the command phase, but once they've destroyed the unit, he can take them to a complete new target, which could be at the other side of the battlefield, and they can slice and dice straight through another unit, no problem. So there's lots of things you can do when you're combining a Chronomancer with Flayed Ones. Scorbit Destroyers, they're probably an obvious example here. They don't have an in-run save, they can't naturally re-roll their charge roll. They've got the same sort of movement as a Chronomancer, so you can keep up with them no problem. Or again, use that Veil of Darkness relic if you want to. Get them within 9 inches, make the charge, slice and dice, but give them the in-run save for their resiliency. They do need it, they're quite expensive. You don't want to be losing Scorbit Destroyers at 30 points a model. Next we've got the Lich Guard. Now, the Lich Guard with the swords and shields will not need a Chronomancer because they've already got the in-run save, haven't they, with their shields. However, if they take the Strength 7 War Scythes, they don't have an in-run save, so which is actually perfect for a Chronomancer to get on board, give them the in-run save, give them the reroll to their charge roll again, slicing through models with that Strength 7 Damage 2 weapon. Maybe you're using the Veil of Darkness relic again. Now, the Veil of Darkness relic is probably quite a common relic for a Chronomancer. Other units you can use that Chronometron ability on, probably the Canoptic Scarab Swarms. If you're in a larger game and you're taking a unit of 9 Scarabs, they've only got a 6+ armor save, so giving them a 5+ invulnerable save could be pretty annoying for your opponent because they're trying to get rid of these Scarabs. They're going to be scoring you so many points. And they've got so many wounds. If you've got a unit of 9 of them, that's 36 wounds. Now if you've all of a sudden given them a 5+ invuln save on top of that, that's going to give your opponent a real headache. We've not mentioned the Ophidian Destroyers yet. Pretty much the same tactic with the flayed ones. They can deep strike in, you can meet your Chronomancer there, Veil of Darkness relic away, slice and dice somewhere else. So what I mentioned earlier with the flayed ones, you literally rinse and repeat, do that with the Ophidian Destroyers. You've got the Locust Heavy Destroyers as well if you want to give them an in-run save, because you don't want to be losing those guys. Those guys are absolute nightmares for your opponent. That 3d3 damage with those Gorse Destructors are pretty massive. Then the final one is the Cryptothralls. Now this isn't for the Chronometron ability, this is just for the Protector's ability that they have. So when you've got Cryptothralls with that within 3 inches of a Cryptek model, the Cryptek model cannot be targeted by range attacks, and that even includes snipers that ignore the Lookout Sir ability. So for 40 points you're going to be getting 2 of these Cryptothralls, or bucket heads if you like. They're not going to take up a slot within your detachment if you've got a Cryptek model, which is really nice because they're an elite option. You don't want to be filling up your elite slots with Cryptothralls. Then the last ability actually buffs the Cryptothralls themselves if they're within 6 inches of the Cryptek model, so their ballistic skill goes up and their weapon skill goes up by 1 to a 3+, and their attacks go to 6, so they're going to have 6 attacks each. So for the unit that will be 12 attacks with strength 5 minus 2 AP 1 damage. That's in both melee and at range. They've got pistols as well so they can shoot into combat. So Cryptothralls are pretty good. Now the only downside to having Cryptothralls is if you're using the Veil of Darkness relic or you're using that Dimensional Sanctum Arcana, they're not going to be able to move with your Cryptek, or your Chronomancer in this case, because they've not got those same abilities. So you've got to bear in mind that one. If you are planning on moving off with the Veil of Darkness relic, for example, your Cryptothralls are not going with the Chronomancer. I just wanted to briefly touch on a few other subjects within the Necron Codex that are going to synergize with the Chronomancer. So the first one relates to his Chronometron ability. So there's 2 ways in the Codex that you can actually increase that range to 12 inches as opposed to 9 inches. Now the first one is from the Warlord trait section, which is Thrall of the Silent King. So it adds 3 inches to the abilities. Now of course he may not be your Warlord, but you can use that rarefied ability stratagem to give him this Warlord trait if you wanted to. Now the second method of doing this is the protocol of Conquering Tyrant. And Directive 1 is the exact same as Thrall of the Silent King. It adds 3 inches to your aura abilities. So if you are using this command protocol, you can be using this one. And of course if you're using the Zarakan Dynasty, you can manipulate the command protocols. You can have 2 command protocols in a row of the same one. There's all sorts of ways you can deal with this. But you can have 3 inches to his Chronometron ability if you wanted to. So let's move on to the section where we talk about secondary objectives. Now it's quite difficult to discuss secondary objectives with a character model, but we're going to give it a go anyway. So he can do some of the following, although it isn't as advisable because of course he's got his Entropic Lance that he wants to be firing. But here's some of the secondary objectives that he could potentially attempt to do. The first one being raise the banners high. And simply because he's an infantry model he can do this. Now he will have to do the action to do this, so he will forego his shooting. Now there are command protocols available which ignore this, so you can shoot and still do an action. But for the majority you're not going to be able to do that. But if you wanted to do this, he can participate and raise the banners high, getting a point on that banner each and every turn. Now from the Battlefield Supremacy list, you've got behind enemy lines. Now because he can either use the Veil of Darkness relic, or he can use that Dimensional Sanctum, Cryptek Arcana as mentioned earlier, he can get behind enemy lines pretty early on in the game. Now if he does it on his own, he can be scoring 2 points behind enemy lines, and if he does it with another unit, you'll be scoring 4 points behind enemy lines per turn. I wouldn't advise doing it on his own, he's not going to be able to survive on his own, but you can do it with another unit, especially if you're using, as mentioned, Veil of Darkness relic or Dimensional Sanctum. Now there are some other options that are available to him in terms of secondary objectives, but they're just not advisable either because he's not a troop selection, so you're going to have to wait an entire turn while doing certain actions, which isn't advisable. it's better off that he's a troop option, or simply because he's only a single model within a unit, and you have to roll less than the amount of models within the unit. For example, retrieve Nuckman data, you're going to have to roll a 1 in order to do the action, which is very unlikely, so it's not worth the risk when doing it with a Chronomancer. Okay, so we're on to the community reviews. This is the part of the video. So we take some community reviews from our Discord. So if you haven't already joined the Discord, the link will be down in the description below. So the first one here is from Amy. Now she's put, his Cryptek ability just doesn't provide as much value as a Technomancer, even when on optimal units. And his unique arcana is lackluster. 7 out of 10, fine but would skip for a third Techno. And then we've got Blade Peacock, who's also given them a 7 out of 10. The Chronomancer is one of the better Crypteks. The 5+ invulnerable save gives some cheeky annoyances, such as casting it on a blob of 20 flayed ones. Rerolling the charge rolls is also very fun. Veil a blob of 20 flayed ones with the Chronomancer with charge rerolls, so much fun. So that's a couple of reviews from our Discord. If you want to get involved in that, as mentioned, join the Discord below. Every single video I'm going to be taking out 2 of your opinions, putting them into the video, so shout out to these 2 for getting involved. Okay, so now we're on to my final thoughts and the conclusion of this video. So where do I start with the Chronomancer? Now he's in almost every one of my lists if I'm honest, although giving invuln saves to units is becoming less and less important as the meta goes on. There's a lot of abilities that just ignore invuln saves now, and also if you've got a 3+ armor save like your Scorpion Destroys for example, and you're being fired at with a -2 AP weapon, that's going to put you up to a 5+ save anyway as a natural armor save. So you don't even actually need the invuln save in that case. So it's only for certain situations, maybe warriors for example, where you actually need an invuln save. Now the reroll to the charge rolls is pretty handy, especially when you combine it with the Novak code or the Butcher's code from the ancient dynasties. However, if you look into the Warlord trait section of the codex, you've got the Implacable Conqueror Warlord trait, which allows core units to reroll their charge roll. So you can actually put this on any of your character models. Okay, they're not going to get the invuln save. For example, you could put this on the Technomancer, which is much better in my opinion than a Chronomancer. He brings models back, he can bring D3 warriors back. He could be healing models as well. I just think you get better value with a Technomancer than you do with a Chronomancer. Both of them being 80 points once you add the control node on to that Technomancer of course. Now the Entropic Lance that you can take with the Chronomancer is pretty decent. I always save 10 points to take that Lance. That strength 8 with the D3 plus 3 damage is pretty tasty, especially when you can defend it with the Lookout Sir bubble or Crypto Throws. It's going to be around for quite a long while in the game. So it's also worth a mention that out of the 4 Cryptek models within the codex, he's the only one that has a natural invuln save. Now to be honest, if that Lookout Sir bubble pops and he gets tagged in combat, all the Crypto Throws are gone if you've taken those, then he's pretty much dead. He's not going to be able to defend himself anyway regardless of that invuln save, but it is worth noting that he's the only one that's got it. So moving on to the stamp of approval. Now I'm actually going to explain the 4 stamps again because if you've not seen the first few videos within the new series, you're probably wondering what are these stamps actually meaning, so I thought I'd re-explain these stamps again in a little bit more detail. So we've got 4 stamps within our new rating system. So the first one is the narrative stamp. These units you're not going to be taking into a tournament, not going to be taking them competitively. You just bring them to your friendly games against your friends, home games, that kind of thing. It then goes up to the next stamp, which is the average stamp. Now these units can do a job, but if they're within the wrong dynasty code for example, or you play them slightly incorrectly, they're not going to be that great. You're not going to take them that often. So those guys are pretty much just average. We then go up to the third tier, which is the competitive stamp. These guys are your bread and butter. You're going to be taking them in most lists, regardless of what dynasty you use. They're going to do you a pretty decent job. Then you come to the best tier, which is top tier. These are virtually an auto include. So far we've only got one unit that's in there, which is the Scarab Swarm unit from the Necron Codex. So we've done that review already. If you haven't already seen that one, check that out. I think that was episode 2. Might be wrong there, you'll have to let me know. So that's the 4 stamps within our new rating system. Now as for a Chronomancer, I'd give him the competitive stamp. Now he's not an auto include for me, but he's also not average either. He's definitely a competitive unit, so that's what he's going to be getting in today's review. So guys, that is the end of the video. Thanks to all the members that are supporting the channel, and also thanks to everybody getting involved in the comments below. All that's left to say, thank you all for watching. I'll see you next time.